Hello, welcome to the electronic home workshop. Today in the workshop we are going to look at a torque in a capacitor. That is how a torque is created in a capacitor and how the torque capacitor can be used to create electronic switch circuit. Now let's say this is a capacitor, but we already know that this is not the circuit diagram of a capacitor. But we are using this so that you will understand the explanation properly. You will be conversant with the explanation here. This is the negative terminal and this is the positive terminal of this capacitor. We already know that when a capacitor is fully discharged, there is no reactance, meaning there is no resistance. The reactance is the resistance which a capacitor will offer to DC current or voltage. And the reactance of a capacitor is called a capacitive reactance. Let's say LC here, XC here is 0 ohms here, meaning the resistance of this capacitor is 0. That means the capacitor is fully discharged, and when the capacitor is fully discharged, there is no resistance. The capacitor is going to act like a short circuit path. So if you apply a current here at the initial stage, the whole current that you apply will pass through the capacitor to the negative terminal. But as it is passing through the capacitor is going to charge and thereby developing a resistance, and that resistance will be dropping the current that is passing through it until it completely stop the current passing through it. That means the capacitor have charged to its maximum level. Now, how to create a torque in a capacitor? Now, to create a torque in a capacitor, you have to connect a resistor parallel to the capacitor here. Now, let's say the value of this capacitor here is 10 kilo ohms. Now, the resistance of this capacitor is 0 and the resistance of this resistor here is 10 kilo ohms. So if let's say you apply 3 milliamp current into the circuit here, there is no resistance here, but there is 10 kilo ohm resistance here. So what will happen to this current? This current is going to pass through this capacitor. All the current is going to pass through this capacitor to the terminal. But as this current is passing through this capacitor, the capacitor is going to charge slowly and slowly. And when the capacitor is charging, it will develop a resistance in it. Now, let's say as this 3 milliamp is passing through this capacitor here, the capacitor has reacted to a particular resistance here. Let's say the resistance has become 10 kilo ohms. When the capacitor is charging, the capacitor has developed a resistance of 10 kilo ohms. Now the resistance of the capacitor here, which is 10 kilo ohm, is now equals to the resistance of this resistor, which is also 10 kilo ohms. Now, so when that happens, actually, this 3 milliamp current is going to be divided into two. Let's say 1.5 milliamp, 1.5 milliamp. Now the 1.5 milliamp is still moving into this capacitor. So what will happen? This 1.5 milliamp actually that is passing into this capacitor here is going to continue to charge the 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 capacitor, but it will not. Let's say it will actually charge this capacitor to this level, but it will not charge this capacitor to the maximum level. If there is no resistance parallel to this capacitor, there is no resistor connected parallel to this capacitor, this 0.1 milliamp will this 1.5 milliamp is going to charge this capacitor to the maximum level. But since there is a resistance here, the capacitor, the 0.1 milliamp is not going to charge this capacitor to the maximum level. Why? Because as this 0.5 milliamp tries to charge the capacitor to the maximum level, the resistor is there to discharge the capacitor. As the capacitor is trying to charge, the resistor, it will be discharging the capacitor. As the capacitor wants to move up, what will happen? The resistor will actually discharge it back to the normal stage, but it will not discharge beyond this level. So what will happen if you want now this capacitor to charge to the maximum level? Since the 1.5 milliamp is not enough to charge this capacitor because of the charging and reactions of this discharging reaction of this resistor. So what will happen? You have to increase here the current. You have to increase the current in this circuit. Now let's say you have increased this current to 5 milliamp. Now if you increase this 3 milliamp, which has split into two, we have 1.5 and 1.5, and the 1.5 is trying to charge this capacitor, but it cannot because the capacitor is being discharged through this resistor. Now you press this button and then you increase the whole current here to 5 milliamp, and this current will be also increased. And since it has increased beyond this 1.5, it will now be able to charge this capacitor to the maximum level. This resistor will not be able to discharge the capacitor because this current has been increased. It now has the power, the capacity to charge this capacitor here. So now if you remove this key here, you open this key here, this 5 milliamp is going to vanish, remaining the 3 milliamp, and you still have the 1.5 here, 1.5 here. But this capacitor here, which has been charged already, will not drop again, will not discharge to this point. It will remain to the on position, and this is the off position. It will remain here. Even if the capacitor tries to reduce it, it will not reduce. It will not discharge to this point. It will stay in this on region here. This is the on region and this is the off region. Now if we connect a transistor to this circuit here, let's say this is a transistor, you connect a transistor here. Since this has charged to the full level, it will now stop this 1.5 milliamp from flowing into the circuit. Now there is going to be enough voltage here. All this 3 milliamp is now going to pass through this point, 1.5, or some is now going to pass through this capacitor, and then some of the current will now pass to this transistor here, thereby switching on the transistor. Now if you want to actually discharge the capacitor, you also have to create a switch here. Now if you press this switch, you have connected both terminal of the capacitor together. You have short circuit it together. So that will actually cause this capacitor to discharge to 0. And when it discharges to 0, the whole current in this circuit will now started to pass through this capacitor, and therefore there is not going to be any current flowing into the resistor, and that will actually cause this resistor to be switched off, because all the current is now passing through the capacitor. You have discharged the capacitor when you press this key. You short circuit the key, and that actually allow this capacitor to be discharged, and all the current is now passing into the capacitor to ground. It will not pass through here because it will not come to this point to actually switch on the capacitor. All the current is, the transistor, all the current now is moving into the capacitor here. But as the current is passing through the capacitor is going to charge again bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit, developing a resistance in it. And that will actually reduce, because it was 3 milliamp that was passing through this capacitor when the capacitor is fully discharged. But as this 3 milliamp is passing through this capacitor, the capacitor is going to charge bit by bit, bit by bit. And when you reach this stage, it will now divide this 3 milliamp into two, 1.5 milliamp and 1.5 milliamp, because the two resistance, the resistance of this resistor is equals to the resistance of this capacitor. So the 3 milliamp will now divide into two. So we'll have 1.5 milliamp into this circuit. But as this continues to pass through the capacitor here, it is still going to develop, it is still going to continue to charge this capacitor. But because of this resistor here, as this is trying to charge the capacitor, this resistor here is also trying to discharge the capacitor. So therefore this 1.5 will not be able, it is not enough capable to charge this capacitor to the on region. As it is trying to do that, if there is no resistance, if there is no resistor connected in parallel to this capacitor, this 1.5 milliamp will charge the capacitor to its maximum level. But since there is a resistor placed in parallel to the capacitor, this 0.1 milliamp is not going to charge the capacitor, because as this 0.1 milliamp tries to charge this capacitor, the resistor is discharging the capacitor. As it tries to charge this capacitor, the resistor is trying to discharge the capacitor to this level. Now if you want this 1.5 milliamp to charge this capacitor to the maximum level, unless you increase the current, the whole current here. When you increase the whole current, let me say you increase it to 5 milliamp, what will happen? The current has now been increased. Now when the current increase, it will now capable of charging this capacitor to the maximum level. And when you open the switch again, the current will go back to normal. And when the current go back to its normal, that is 1.5, it will not still, this capacitor will not discharge. This resistor here will not be able to discharge this capacitor, because this capacitor has fully discharged already. When it tries to discharge it, this 1.5 will now fill it back. When it wants to discharge it, this 1.5 will fill it back. So this will never be discharged to the off region. So because of this, the switch here, the transistor here is going to remain on, because there is no current now flow into this capacitor, because the capacitor has fully charged. So this 1.5 milliamp is now moving into the transistor here, thereby switching on the transistor here. So if you want this transistor here to be switched off, what you will do, you will press this key, and when you press this key, you short circuit the terminal of the capacitor, that is the negative terminal and the positive terminal and the negative terminal has been short circuit, and this will cause this capacitor to discharge to the off region. And when the capacitor is discharged, all this current now is moving into this direction. There is no current flowing into the transistor circuit, and that will actually cause the transistor to switch off. So meaning the charge is here, so the transistor will be switched off because this is this off region. But the transistor will be continue to charge, the capacitor will be continue to charge because there is a current still flowing into the circuit. But it will not jump because it will be divide into two. This 3 milliamp will divide into two, and this will be too weak to charge this capacitor to the maximum level because of the resistor placed in this in parallel to the capacitor. So thank you very much. That is how a torque is created in a capacitor, and that is how you will use the torque capacitor to create an electronic switch circuit. Don't hurry, watch the practical video, and then you will actually see the reality part of our explanation. You will see exactly how our explanation will be demonstrated practically. Thank you very much for your audience. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Thank you very much. Thank you once more again.